Hello and welcome to Angel's Costumes Behind the Scenes. I'm Jeremy Angel.
I'm Richard Green.
And I'm Jonathan Lippman.
And this week we're going to do a slightly different episode to normally. We're just going to have a look back and have a chat amongst the three of us about what the year's been. And I think the only way to describe 2020, it's been a year.
Well, I can think of a number of other ways to describe it, but yeah, none that my mother would approve of.
We have also been sent a few questions, which we'll also get to as well. But in the meantime, it's been an interesting year for everyone, and obviously, if had it not been for COVID and everything that happened, we wouldn't have actually got a chance to do these interviews, which we have all been thoroughly enjoying, and it's added work for us, but I think it's been work that we've enjoyed, and I think we've learned just as much from the people we've been interviewing as the listeners seem to have been.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I mean, we were talking about doing these things before we had the lockdown and the opportunity to do it. But yeah, you're right. We probably would have just kept on talking about it and never getting it done. It's bad enough trying to get the three of us, or rather, it's bad enough trying to get me connected so that the three of us can talk.
It has been interesting, and we can give you a little bit of a look of how things have changed for us, besides the normals of face masks and everything like that, which everyone is obviously aware of. And Jonathan has been on the pointy end of the stick with, he's been doing fittings and doing a few shows as well over the past few weeks, which has been why he's been absent from the last two episodes we've done. But from an Angel's point of view, it has thrown a lot of curveballs our way. We've had to get our heads around a lot of new things. The testing is just another side of everything, which I think no one can completely get their head around. If I'm perfectly honest, there's no single one way of testing that seems to be in place with every production. They all have their own system and their own protocols. So we took the approach quite simply. We have our policy, and the way it's worked for us is we've turned our entire warehouse into a one-way system. So
well, we have to create a safe environment by our standards for our staff and our customers. And in a world where there are so many mixed messages and various interpretations of guidelines, the standard that we've set here has actually been commented on as making our customers feel very safe.
Yeah. I mean, I am going to blow our own trumpet here. You know, Tim was way ahead of the curve on
Absolutely.
this. You know, we were talking about this really, really early days, weren't we? And you know,
we had nothing else to talk about.
week one of lockdown. This is when it all started.
I mean, it literally was from one day there was work to the next day there was nothing. So what else are we going to discuss?
I know.
When work does eventually kick back in, how will we function? And a lot of it had to be done by guesswork and anticipation, and it paid off, because actually at points there was such a consideration that, you know, we were doing the right thing, that the building became too busy.
Yeah.
And then subsequently unsafe.
Ironically, because it was so successful, it was then becoming a bit of an issue, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, the other thing is, I suppose, if we're all honest with ourselves, one of the other reasons these podcasts came out is I think we'd all had enough of the Zoom calls of 20 people all talking at each other, and it was much easier for us to control a screen when we knew it was just us and one other person talking about costume.
Yeah.
Well, it was the optimum time to be able to chat to the people that we wanted to engage with, because primarily they were sitting around waiting
for work,
something to happen. And so we had their time. It has become harder to nail people down to a specific time and conversation, because as people have picked up, especially in film and television world, the theatre industry has yet to kind of reveal itself in terms of plans and how it's going to best go.
Although even there are sort of, you know, signs of things happening. I mean, I know you're involved in what's the title of it? Doorstep
Productions, which is essentially a venture created to professional performers, singers, actors.
Basically, it's professional people from what mostly the West End shows, Mary Poppins and things that will come and sing on your doorstep for a fee. I mean, that's kind
Yeah,
of it. They're in costume as well, aren't they?
they are costumed
Yeah.
and accessories or outfits,
Hmm.
dependent, and
It's exactly what it sounds like. Actually, it's exactly what it says on the tin. It is people from musical theatre and performances will come to your doorstep and perform in costume. And I don't think they can go into tier 3. Well, that might be wrong with that, but they perform in costume on your doorstep. I think it's a very clever idea. And has it been an enjoyable process to be involved in, Jonathan, with all the different talent and people involved?
yeah, it's we've got to nail the operational side of it in terms of how it's actually physically going to be rolled out, but the
Mm.
initial reaction and how people have responded so favorably in terms of individual, households who have made bookings and made inquiries. There obviously is a genuine hunger for seeing performers. So we'll see how it transpires as the months progress. Because we initially it was something that we wanted to do over the Christmas period, but it looks like it's something that could be rolled out over the next couple of months.
Well, I know for a fact that if you ever got Alfie Boe involved in that, there's Emma would be front of the line reserving him for at least 2 days just to sing Les Mis to her on her doorstep. So, um, but no, it's a great idea, and I hope it does do, and I hope it does do, is a success it deserves to be. And with all of that, you've been doing fittings as well because you've been away with fittings. How has the fitting process been for you, Jonathan, on productions that you've actually been fitting on with COVID?
Well, that was that grateful to say that the COVID process in terms of testing and uh, access to performers safely very strictly adhered to, and
Mm.
kind of stressful because the tendency is you want to go in and you want to touch everything and you want to fiddle with ties and bow ties, and actually you just can't do that. You have to instruct from afar and rely on the performer to um, to be mindful of what they're wearing and how they're wearing it within their character. But at the same time, you don't want the costume to take precedence. It all has to fit in with each other.
I think it's important to point out because the fitting thing has been a very interesting thing going forward since with everything, and it was one of the biggest things that we had concerns about of how can we put someone in a room with someone else touching in this close proximity, and so making the change as you've just said of
Yeah.
basically you don't get in as close with some of the fittings,
Hmm.
and the actor has to do that sort of thing. It's a very interesting balance that the designers, us as a costume house with costumiers, and productions in general have to find a way of the science and the medical not completely destroying the
Yeah.
artistic process or
Yeah,
creativity.
yeah, that's very
and
Hmm.
and it's very hard because it's very easy for them to go, you can't do this, you can't do that. But a very simple thing which some people haven't thought about with fittings at the time is the way we do fittings, the way productions do fittings, and you just need to listen to the interviews of people who talk about organizing the large crowds that we've done, is you'd get them all going in a day, you'd have a rail of costumes all in different sizes, and Bob's in fitting room number 1, you put that jacket on, it doesn't suit him, so you take the next jacket. You then have to quarantine or clean in such a way that you could possibly maybe reuse that jacket on David's fitting 2 hours later. But
mm,
that's what you used to do. But now with COVID, there's a lot more protocols, and it does remove that. So it's those little things that you've got to plan more. So the one thing COVID has taught us is we need a lot more time to plan things
Yeah.
thoroughly. But it's an interesting mix because it's creativity versus
Hmm.
science, or not versus, but creativity and science and health. And you have to be able to find a balance because the reason the designers are hired and because they're so good at what they do is because they can be creative and they suddenly can see something and put it in. So it's an interesting problem that has come up. With all of that, there are a few questions that I thought I would fire at you guys. I might jump in on some, but I'd be very interested to know your answers with some of these as well. So I'm not going to say Mrs. Moggins of 53 Blenheim Place. There's a few things that have come up, and we've had a few messages, whether it's on social media or our email. So I thought I'd ask the question. So recently, we have been doing a lot more content on our Instagram, including images of stuff that we've made, just processes, and more costume and more designer drawings that we've had access to. One of the things we showed was the jacket from Poldark, the red jacket that was worn, and I believe with the story with that one is it was made new and then broken down. What is the process of breaking down? Is that something we can do in house, or we normally pass outside of house?
Well, I think it depends entirely on what item requires to be broken down and to what degree. And what tends to happen is if we're making a costume, we tend to dispatch that item that we've made, and a breakdown technician artist is employed to create whatever then needs to happen to that costume in terms of wear and tear, coloring, dyeing. So essentially that isn't something that's done in house. But what we do is, prior to manufacturing, depending on what the costume is being made for, we will either wash or dye fabric before it is made. So we're at the start of the process, and then a specialized technician will be employed, depending on the production and their budget. The specialized technician will be employed to work with the designer on what that costume needs to look like on the performer during the action. So the tendency is for us to stop at the point that the costume is actually made.
Okay.
Does that answer that question?
It does. So we will make it and then normally send it on to the production. So we make it new for them to destroy, in essence.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't use the word destroy.
No, destroy. I'm sorry. I'm being rather glib with that. I apologize. Sorry.
To augment or to enhance or to affect it, to make it fit for purpose.
And it is a fantastic art and skill to be able to do. And it is someone we will be wanting to talk to next year, is someone who talks about breaking down in that process and how they got into it and everything. So that is something we will hopefully be getting into next year. But
yeah. And our dyeing and breaking down facilities that we have in house tends to be used for fabric and materials that need to be processed before they get manufactured. So we're very much at the front end of the process, and then a team of people take over from us prior to the costume being worn on set or on stage or, wherever it might be required.
I got into terrible trouble years ago with Betsy Hyman, who'd come over for the first time on a film called High Road to China. And she gave me a brand new leather jacket for Tom Selleck that needed breaking down, and I gave it to my art department, but my art department went a little bit too far, and Betsy was not at all happy. They really distressed this thing, and fortunately she had another one, but it was a case of just it's possible to over break down if you're not careful.
One question we had got, which was we cannot answer directly, but are there courses we would recommend people go on if they want to go into costume? And it's a really tough question to ask us, because I think Jonathan and Richard, you've both mentioned before, it's very cyclical where the strengths are with the different universities and colleges and things. But it's more about finding the correct course rather at the moment. They're all good courses out there, but we couldn't possibly turn around and say, well, you should go to X university, because that might be the flavor of the month at the moment. But it's more, the course is the most important thing at the moment, is what we could recommend more than the institution, if that makes sense. Not going off and doing left-handed glove making as an example, but doing a course that gives you an all-round or at least a direction.
The onus is on the student or the advisor to establish the details of whatever the course is that are available, what they encompass, and if the student is interested in glove making in context to corset making, or learning about the logistics of stage costume within stage management, and all of those, that now unlike, I don't know, even 15 years ago, there are such specific modules that can be learned through, under the umbrella of costume technician, costume wardrobing, costume making, costume designing. That it's the students, the onus is on them to research thoroughly all of the colleges that have these creative courses within their within their structure.
The one thing that these podcasts have thrown up is the fact that there are so many different varied ways of coming to this industry or starting to work in this industry, that you can't really recommend any one course, because various things go.
We will be, again, not that we keep meaning to tying this back, we are going to be interviewing some more people from different courses as well, just to get a feel for the educational system within costume as well, because it is just as important as the people on the sets and everything. And I hope you've got that from us as well.
Richard, you take on, in particular in terms of the military, you take on youngsters that have really worked their way through. Tom being an example, Callum, Chris now as the head of the department. I mean, they came to you as what, reenactors, or as students of, do they know about Angels from their own hobby reenactment activities, or is it through education?
No, I mean, I think basically it's all pretty serendipitous. Chris, we've interviewed and spoken to him, and he actually came along for a non-military job. But to be perfectly honest, throughout all the years, if anybody shows an aptitude and awareness of what the ranking system is, I'll take them, because the techniques of measuring and sizing and even the way that fittings are conducted, all of those things can be taught. But in the case of uniforms specifically, you need to have a certain kind of interest and aptitude for all the minutiae of what it is. Whereas, just as I suppose in the costume side, you need to have a better sense of colour and of coordination and of all of those things, style, I suppose. Whereas military doesn't need style; it needs accuracy. And
the common factor between both is a love of history and stories.
Yes, or a love of film, or a love of one of those things that brings you into this particular side of the industry.
Well, I mean, I can't claim that was. I've been working with Angels with what I've done, and my appreciation for costume has definitely only grown since I've been working more in it. And it's now to the point of I can have an opinion about certain things that 10 years ago, I couldn't tell you if something was costumed correctly or anything like that, because I wasn't living and breathing costume the whole time, and I didn't have as good an understanding of some of the periods as I do now. And it definitely grows, and it's definitely working with people here and the customers who have such a passion for history and for costume that you pick up new things, and you're always learning something new from a production. At least I am.
Well, it develops as you become more and more immersed in the environment that you're working within, and the conversations that you have with people. It would be like working in a Mr. Kipling's cake factory. You become an expert at dealing with it, without being that glib about it. It's familiarity and association and connection and interest, and all of that combines to move you forward. And whether you move forward and maintain a career at a company like Angels, or whether you decide that you get to a point where you want to expand further within the industry, and you move into the the freelance sector, costume, then that's it's good that those choices are available.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Talking of all of that, another question is, do you have a preference in the period you work in? I suppose there's two ways of asking that. To Richard, is there a period you enjoy working with the customer when they come in? You're like, that's what I like, or it's just for you, it's you don't mind what it is. You don't have a preference for what shows you're working on.
No, well, we're talking about uniform now, or
Either or uniform, because you don't just do uniform, you do also do
in-
civilian as well.
In terms of uniform, I'm always far more comfortable with 20th century uniforms than I am with earlier periods.
Yeah, but Richard, because you're curious, and your nature and your aptitude, and you're a curious person, therefore I would say that you would take on where there's a piece of information that needs to be processed. You have the mechanics in order to work out how to source that information, how to get to the nub of something, and then it's a creative decision as to whether you go down that road in a literal way or whether you twist it to make it work for the particular drama that you're.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've always really enjoyed is the research side and the looking things up and facts.
I would agree with that. I would.
Yeah.
I think for me it's much more important to be able to have the time and the input in terms of research and.
Yeah, and again, looking at you when you are actually working on a production, the amount of research and reference that you produce is really quite staggering.
I think that's key because you're creating a world. So you're creating a world for your performer, but you're also creating a world for your director, and you're also creating a world for your own team.
Yeah.
And in order for that world to be portrayed effectively, everybody needs to completely understand not just the point that you're trying to make from a concept point of view, but the actuality.
Yeah.
And with all of that, and I completely appreciate the fact of whatever you're working on and you're going to research and you're going to understand and learn it. Is there a period from a design point of view, Jonathan, that you would love to design or love to design for?
Or
there isn't a period that I've got any preference for. I would be inclined to be less interested in something that was purely uniforms, because I find it harder to express my own input, because I do believe that uniforms should take on the actuality of the world that they're representing. But having said that I did a production of Candide for Bergen Opera in Norway, and I had the best time trying to create these fantasy dystopian uniforms.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of designers do feel constrained by uniforms because basically the designing has been done by whichever war department was designing them at the period, and of course, some people see that as a constricting thing, and some people see that as a liberating thing. But quite often you'll hear, "Well, I'll leave the uniforms to you." And I'll concentrate on the civilian side, the side that needs more, if you like, individual designing.
I always do like with the uniforms when people do question it and they don't like the material, or they don't like look. They're like that's great. But it's a uniform.
Yeah,
it's meant to be out of that material. It's meant to look like that. But if you want to change it, that's fine. But this is what's correct.
Except you're creating a drama, so
yes. Well, that's always the defense. I think for that is it's a drama. It's not. But then you get into the realm of where Richard's pet hate is it is only a drama, but people might take it seriously. And
yeah. I mean, my theory is always, I'll tell you what it should be, and then if you decide that you don't want to do that, that's exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the best starting point, and that's how I approach. That's how I talk to you.
Yeah.
If I need to know something, just tell me what it is, and then I can I can then make an educated decision based on what it is that I'm working, the world that I'm immersed in, as to how I then represent it.
And of course, the other thing now with the this increasing obsession with getting clearance and permission to use almost anything that's represented, knowing what it should be and actually being able to use that are sometimes two different things. The Red Cross is a classic example of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the final question I have for both of you, and I don't even know if I can answer it, so I'd be impressed.
2020.
2020. What would you know? Is there anyone you guys would like to be able to get or to speak to? Someone, basically, that was a generic. The question we were asked was: are there people that you'd sit there and go, "I'd love to be able to talk to this person about their journey, about their career"? Is there anyone like that, or you're just happy to talk to anyone and everyone?
Well, I'll talk to anyone, but I was thinking about this. I was thinking it'd be really great to talk to somebody like Irene Sharif, wouldn't it, Jonathan?
Yeah, Edith Head.
Edith Head. Oh my God!
Let's bring her back from the dead.
I was going to say it's going to take a Ouija board.
Because when you think of that level of designing where it was a factory, and where Edith Head's or Adrian or any number of those designers working within that 30-year time span of Hollywood, where they were the designers sitting on top of hundreds of different teams of not just makers but sub designers, associates, assistants. A factory in the truest sense of the word, and the like of which has never been seen since.
No, I mean, Edith Head is particularly, her body of work is absolutely phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, and the awards she won for it as well.
I mean, again, and I suppose everybody who's listening to this will be doing this. That normally if you go to the cinema, the credits roll and there's this huge stampede as everybody rushes to get out. Apart from some of us who sit there waiting for the credits to roll.
Yes,
and we are all interested in those credits and seeing what they are. But you watch any of those, virtually any film from that period, and it's always like costumes, Edith Head, or as you say, some of the others. But amazing.
You're right. I actually had that yesterday. We were watching a film in the evening, and the name came up, and I was like, oh, that's so and so. I've just been talking to them, and I not that I wasn't any interested any less in my interest before wasn't changed, but I then paid more attention because I'd literally had a conversation with the designer which I had no idea about like 2 days previous. So
I've just done that cheaty thing that I'm we're all supposed to pretend we know all of this stuff without looking it up. Edith Head won 8 nominated for 35 Academy Awards.
It's crazy.
35.
Well, we hope you've been enjoying this. You've enjoyed this mini year review from us about the state of costume to a point and answering some of your questions. We will obviously be back in the new year. We are going to take a break.
Sorry, can I just interject that? On a positive note, when we're talking about this year and how horrible it's been, I cannot remember us being quite as busy as we are at the moment and look like we're going to be into, I don't want to hex this, into January.
No, and there's a lot of work there, but I think it also does need to be, before that's taken the wrong way, I think a lot of the feeling is it's been very busy and there's a lot of people and lots of things going on, but the volume of what we're busy with is completely different to where it would have been. You're not looking at 500, 600, 700 costumes going out the door on productions. It's far below that, but there's a lot more people we were working with because they feel safe and with what's going on, and there's a lot coming, which is a good thing, because I think if anyone's like me, Netflix is almost out of content for me. So
of course, I'm not saying that everything in the garden is absolutely fantastic, but if you take it from, say, the first week in April
to where we are today,
where we are is amazing, and there does seem to be willingness to make productions and to get things going again. Thank goodness.
No, definitely. But
yeah, and in terms of our work, we've and the podcast, we've got a few surprises lined up for next year in terms of who we've approached and what we're going to present. So it's always worth keeping an ear out for what we're up to.
Yeah. No, definitely. And we've thoroughly been enjoying it. And as I said, I'm looking forward to seeing who Jonathan throws at us next year, that Richard and I have no idea who they are. So we listen to it and go, oh my word, how did I not know who they were? But no, it's definitely, we've all three enjoyed it. There's a lot more content to come next year, and have a lovely Christmas and a happy new year. Stay safe. And we look forward to speaking to you all, or at least appearing in all your ears in the new year.
Is it possible to appear in somebody's ear?
Metaphorically speaking.
Yes, exactly.
All right, okay, fine.
But from a personal note, both of you, thank you very much. It has been great fun this year doing this.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Brilliant. We will see you all in the new year.
Yep.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.